Call the meeting of the open budget work session of the Somerset County Schools into order. Melissa, will you call a roll, please?
Chairperson Nicholson,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Greenville,
Here.
Board Member Whittingham,
Here.
Board Member Monk,
Here.
Board Member Wells,
Absent.
Dr. Gaddis,
Present.
Mr. Davis,
Present.
Ms. Bartamy. Present. All are present except Mr. Wells, who is absent from the meeting.
Thank you. I declare a quorum. You have before you the summary of the 2021 proposed budget. Dr. Gaddis.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming in this morning. We have the proposed FY21 budget. I first want to thank Mrs. Linda Johnson, our CFO, for leading the cause on this. This has been really a big task, especially this year with everything with COVID-19. We have a lot of counties that are, we don't have, but the state has a lot of counties that are having to go back in and amend budgets because of revenues that have been lost, revenue taken back by county commissioners. And while I wish we had a situation where we were over maintenance of effort, we are appreciative of maintenance of effort. The county has never asked for a waiver of that, and that started to creep up in some other places. So it's very hard when you're so dependent upon state funding and everything that's going on. And so we have had probably 3 or 4 very long work sessions led by Linda about what we needed to do and where we need to make cuts and how we can make the cuts and how we could use money from things this year to buy, while at the same time understanding that FY22 and 23 are going to be real bad. That's the true effect of COVID-19 when we start hearing $2.4 billion deficit from the shutdown. So for us, that's very scary because we receive approximately 76, 77% of our money from the state. The other thing I want to just bring out before I turn it over to Linda is just something to think about. I had put a request in and I received the answer of no. But this coming fall, the September 30th count is going to be crucial. If parents do not send students back to school, they choose other options, our number goes down. If things get better and they come back, we will not have received funding. So I had asked the state superintendent to consider moving that date to December 1st. Technically through COMAR and federal issues, they told me they cannot do that. So I will be talking to Senator Carrozza and Delegate Otto about what can we do to at least have not a stay put, Linda, but a hold harmless, so that if we do go down 200 students because parents decide they're going to homeschool or do something else, that we're not harmed, because take that 200 times 13,000, we're in a much different position, and we don't want to get there. So anyway, again, thank you to Linda and Tom and Tracy and Beth Whitelock. As we have gone through personnel, we have gone through looking at programs, reoccurring costs and everything to get to a point where we are to then be able to come back to you. Hopefully we'll just do it on virtually on Monday to approve this. But it was good to have this session. So Linda, with that, turn it to you. Just be loud. Yeah, you have to.
Good morning, Dr. Gaddis, Chairperson Nicholson, and members of the board. We're meeting here this morning to review the fiscal year 21 proposed budget. If you will turn to page 2, you will see the summary of our revenue for next year. And if you look at the total revenue, all the way at the bottom of the most far right column, you will see that our total increase in revenue for next year is $696,664. So that is not a huge increase with which to provide everything that we need to provide, raises for staff, health insurance increases. So we're really working with a very tight budget and a very, small revenue increase, if you ask me. Dr. Gaddis did talk about the enrollment decline that we may see. We did have an enrollment decline in fiscal year 20 of about 40 students, I believe. So as you will notice, under the state revenue for next year, we do have a declining enrollment grant, which is $206,000. And so the state does do that to help offset any decrease in enrollments that the district may have. We don't really have anything like that with the county. That really does go by the enrollment. But the declining enrollment helps to average out the enrollment over, I believe it's like the past 3 years, to determine, to give you more revenue.
Can you explain to the board with the county appropriation, how it actually went up even though enrollment was down?
The county appropriation went up because the state, if they don't hit a certain increase, the state will mandate an increase. So there was a 2.5% increase on the per pupil amount that the county was required to fund. That is actually what made our county revenue go up, was that 2.5% increase that they were required to meet.
And so what that really means is the state is pushing counties to fund more than maintenance of effort. So if you're not going to, so even at maintenance of effort, their increase, it should have gone the other way by 40 students, and it did not, because there's a certain threshold they want all systems to be at.
Yes, yes. Okay, so if you'll flip back, and I'm sorry, all of the pages are numbered except for a couple of them, because town likes them numbered. So if you go, it does make it easier.
And dated, is date on it?
Yeah.
Yes, there it is.
It is
So
about
if you turn to page 26, we'll go all the way to the back now, we see the revenue. We see where we are at this point. If you look at the bottom, the difference between the revenues and the requested expenditures is $364,511. So that is kind of what we're, as we go through the budget now, we're looking to find ways to cut costs so that we can get to a net zero. And we have done a lot of work. If you look at turn to the next page, the next couple of pages, and they aren't numbered, you can see where we started, round one. The starting excess expenditures over revenue. We were at $2,650,839. So we have done quite a bit of cutting. What allowed us to cut, and I mentioned it a little bit at the board meeting, was, we need replacement technology and new technology. Well, the CARES Act has allowed us to fund all of that through the CARES grant funds. And so we were able to kind of cut a lot of those increases out for fiscal year 21. So that did help save a lot. So you can, as you kind of can scan down the list, you can see some of the things that we have cut out thus far in the process. And if you review those and you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer regarding those.
And also the 6.5 days of professional development at the beginning of the school year allow us to take some of the things we're going to do during the summer and do them during that time period as well.
Yes.
What about the social, I'm looking at 4th grade social studies, 8th grade social studies, 10th grade social studies.
Yes.
What does that mean?
We could cut that because we were moving to more of an online model, so we are actually purchasing the online model with the CARES.
So what do you cut? I guess I'm
That
my
was
question.
textbooks.
Textbooks.
Oh, taxes, okay.
It's amazing still what textbooks cost. And also through CARES, we've been able to upgrade our bandwidth,
Yes.
spend just over $100,000 of CARES money and being able to, so we can provide faster service to our schools, which is going to help with the increase in laptops and devices that students will have.
Special sped teacher not filled, where is that?
That was, I believe, at Washington High School, and I don't have my notes. We did have sped teacher leave
Last year, we couldn't
last
fill
year,
it.
and we didn't fill it, yeah, we couldn't
So
fill
you're
it.
not saying you're not filling it this year, it was just to save some
I
money?
think we were gonna adjust caseloads.
Exactly. That's where we did a caseload review.
Okay.
And so we're looking at where they are, and they're under 20. And so to bring someone in, to bring it down to 13 or something, we need to save that money. 20 caseload is fair, especially with the IEP clerks. And you'll also see that with some consultants, again, we're working with them because everybody's in the same boat. No one's really doing a lot of summer PD, so there are a lot of people available in the fall. And in fact, we've been lucky, talking with Tracy Cotman, we have, the gentleman's name leaves me, but we have been able to acquire cultural awareness training and sensitivity training free of charge to come work in the district. And what we're doing is we'll do initial PD, those 6.5 days, and then they will come back during the year, which allows us to spread it out. And you'll also see there's big reductions in LSI. We really were seeing good things with that at the elementary level. But because of the fact that right now the instructional staff is working on a 45-day recovery plan. So as I mentioned at the board meeting, each teacher will have a document of the standards they missed, and where they fit in, where they can teach that because it was missed. You can't do something like LSI. You can't, we have to put that on the back burner. We've got to get caught up first. And our goal was not to teach everything we missed in the first quarter just by itself because you're still a quarter behind. But it's going to be infused in the curriculum, and that's being worked on now.
There is, in the budget, one thing that we did add after we kind of all started this process, and if you look at the second page of the budget cuts, you'll see there's $40,000 added for an additional PC technician. With all of the new devices and the one-to-one initiative, we really need at least one more person, and I'm sure that John Berlin would say he needs more. There is a lot of maintenance and programming and everything with those devices, and so they really need an additional person to be at those schools to help even out the load of dealing with these laptops and Chromebooks and everything else.
So what will happen is 6 through 12 has HP laptops. They will be set up where they automatically upload during the day. So if I have class or planning at 10 o'clock, I can do my assignments. I can upload those to the cloud with all the active links on the web and everything. And everything that student needs will be downloaded to that computer, so when they get home, they have the actual links. That's 6 through 12. 3 through 5 will have Chromebooks, and pre-K through 2 will have Chrome tablets. So every student will have a device. So it's going to change how we're able to do a lot of things, and doing it this way with the management system and with Mrs. Holland and Jill leading us in Google, it takes internet access off the table for a lot of students. Because even we look at hotspots, they're $600 a piece for the year. Yeah. And in some spots, they still don't work. So, this will help us greatly.
Yeah, I believe as part of some of the CARES funding, or some of the funding regarding the pandemic, the county has actually received, I can't remember how much money from broadband to actually begin to expand the broadband access in the county.
Right.
And I believe Donna Gunning, the MSDE finance person there, sent me an email that said, it looked at the access percentage for all the counties. And Somerset said that we have 66% of our population can access broadband, which is pretty low. Other counties, I think, Worcester was 88%,
Right.
and Wacomico was something like 92%. So, we've got a long ways to go, so hopefully the county will be able to, with that grant money, really expand their capabilities in that regard, which would help everybody, not just our students, but, businesses and parents and things like that, so.
And also, a thank you to the county commissioners. We were one of 3 counties that, every school system received CARES money and every county received it. We were only one of 3 systems in the state where the county gave money to the school system. So they gave us $402,000 towards our technology. So we appreciate their continued support.
Yes, she's very appreciative of that. Also, this version of the budget does include our counter offer in negotiations of the 0.5% COLA and a step for the employees as of January 15th. So that is included in this as well.
And I think that's big because, again, we want to keep everybody on step. And those of you who were here, actually it's just Margo, through before I even got here 7 years ago, now 8 years, wow. You all kept the step. I'm glad you kept that step, and that's important to keep us even. We may not be given the COLAs that other counties are given, but to only receive $696,000, that does not even cover the raise. And so we've done without, you'll see that, we've done without not only at the school level, but at this complex as well, with some positions that, if you approved one at the last board meeting, out of my office, and it will not be filled. So we'll have to, the 3 of us will work and do what we have to do to, everybody's gotta give. And so that's what's happening. So, anyway.
And I think it's, we also, to help alleviate some of the budget constraints for next year, we offered a retirement incentive this year for people that have a minimum of 30 years or a 10% retirement incentive of their salary. And I think we've had 1 person.
But as the salt air gets to them and August rolls around, I think we might see some more. But we have had, first time in my career, sitting in this kind of position, even in Worcester, where we have rescinded, 3 retirements, 2 or 3? So yeah, but I think the COVID-19 is, if you look at, we're blessed to have a state retirement. But if you have a personal retirement, you lose multiple years in that doesn't look too good right now. So, anyway, but going through this, we have kept in mind with the board priorities established at our retreat work, with professional development, with small class size, and I think unfortunately that may take care of itself depending on what happens this fall. But please understand that we will continue to work with our Teachers Association. Will continue, things are changing every week. So you will, I would assume, probably would see a lot of Linda coming up and explaining, well, we may have to move this here or that there. And I wish all the money had come out from COVID-19, and we knew, because there's, am I right, still a chance some of that money we could have used.
Yeah, we're still waiting on the governor's GEARS funds to be announced, so.
Yeah. And that's based
We
on.
have a CFO call every Tuesday now. We did have them Tuesdays and Thursdays, and now we're down to just Tuesdays. So we do have a call today, and last week at our call is when they said that there was going to be an announcement about the GEARS money soon. So I'm sure that will come back up again today.
And that's based on Title I funding.
That is
And
just.
we would do fairly well based on our Title I numbers.
And which is the way CARES was also allocated.
So you're talking,
We got 1.3 million out of CARES money. And so I don't know how much the total amount of the GEARS, the governor's GEARS funds are, and how much he's gonna allocate, I'm not sure. But he can use that for elementary and secondary and institutes of higher learning. So I have a feeling he is going to allocate some to the university system in the state. And then hopefully we'll get the balance and that'll be allocated. So we're anxiously awaiting to hear about that as well, so. If you want to kind of go back to page 3, we'll kind of just quickly walk through the different categories and sections and see if there's any questions that you have. You'll note that some actually do have some reductions from last year, and we really did try to, keep costs to a minimum if we could possibly do that. So if you look at the board members category, you can see that there's actually a small decrease, and that's just kind of based on what actual costs have been this year as a trend. A couple things went up, but for the most part, this section of the budget is based on what's actually been happening. You'll see we actually do have, in the budget, we have travel expenditures for all different categories, for staff travel, for various meetings and things. With the virtual meeting environment, I wonder if that's even gonna continue, if that'll be a trend at this point.
It'll be interesting. Well,
I hope so.
Maeve already announced they're doing their conference virtually.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, how many people are gonna take 3 days off to sit at home on a computer and do that? So it'll be interesting, but I think through the fall at least,
Yeah.
we're gonna see things canceled and all go virtual.
Yeah.
But if you are on a MAID committee or you have something, you're welcome, because you're approved to drive one of our vehicles, or remember, don't forget to turn in your mileage and
Yeah.
that's part of being a board member, you're serving, so turn those things in.
Okay. If you turn the next page to executive administration, the real increase here is that we just moved the position from the public relations specialist position. It was in the HR category, and we moved it over to executive administration as that position reports to executive administration. So that's the only real, looks like a big increase, but it's really not. It's just shifting the position to a different spot in the budget. And likewise, a lot of the things here, the changes in this section are based on what actually is happening. But actually really the past year, so things may be different for next year, so.
We pay a lot in dues.
We do pay a lot in consortium dues, and there's a breakdown
I saw that.
in the back of what those dues are.
And I think that's for the May $18,000, Bazam $5,500, ASMEC $11,000, and then made legal $3,600, and then a hard assessment $47,000, so $42,000, and we need those, but at the same time,
Yeah,
It's
if
a
you look
lot.
at the back of your packet, the details of these
Yeah,
are in the
let's
back
take
of the
this.
packet, because they're not included in the,
just so you
Budget.
it breaks it out, so if someone were to say, well, why do you pay all those dues? Well, ASMEC's very important, because we're part of the ASMEC trust. And so, and again, always pay Maeve legal.
Oh, yes.
And actually Maeve and Bazam as well. Bazam's been a good organization to help all of us, but it is interesting.
yeah, I really think that in this situation, the dues that, the consortium dues that we pay, they are for very beneficial organizations that really do provide quite a few services, I believe, and supports and things like that, and,
The one we dropped a couple of years ago was Middle States,
Yeah.
which was like 30,000.
yeah, that's
And
what
we,
it's.
we dropped that.
Yeah.
So anyway, right.
So that's the executive administration. If you look at finance and business support, there's a little bit of a change there. We reclassified a position this year based on workload. But our software went down. We did an upgrade for e-finance this year that we were required to do, so that was included in the fiscal year 20 budget, now that's paid for, so that dropped. Our postage does keep going up. I will say postage this year we've really blown the budget with postage this year, but we're gonna get some of that reimbursed with the CARES money, because sending out those packets, where we used to draw down about $2,000 a month in postage, we were doing $17,000 a month in postage.
Do you know what we spent total?
I don't, but it's been a lot. I would say it's probably close to $30,000 on packets. If you think they're $3,000 a week.
Yeah, we went over that.
So-
We're not done. We got report cards to mail.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to mail out report cards, you're right.
so
Wow.
it's been quite an expensive.
Should we get a bang for a buck?
You know, surprisingly, we, Mr. Bede and Mr. Bevilacqua down at Chrisfield did packets, and do you remember what the rate was?
I think it was up in the low 70s is
Yeah, it was-
return rate.
A return?
Of return.
Yeah.
And students really did the work. A lot of packets, now a lot of people, one of the things we learned, it's getting off track, but one of the things we learned was that we wanted to protect teachers and their cell phone numbers. But a lot of teachers gave their numbers out to students and said, you know what, just send me a picture of it, or text me, or email me. And so a lot of work was done in packets and then sent in that way and not collected. But I know, again, Mr. B sent us the data. They kind of hounded, they went to hound us.
We had a mad rush. When we sent that phone call out 2 Tuesdays ago to tell them that the 12th was the last day for submission, we had a mad rush of people bringing them and also giving them to the buses. So that was good.
Yeah, I think it was higher than we thought it would be.
Yeah.
And that's at high school. So,
Was there a comparison between lower and upper county or?
no, I would say probably, we can get that, about equal. But it was more than we had anticipated. And we also found out quite a few that came back that, you know, it's part of our I think our system is, a lot of people, once especially school was canceled, they relocated. They went to a family in Baltimore. I had somebody from Baltimore City call me and say, oh, can you send a package up here? I put the kids with my mom to be up there so I could go to work. So,
That's what surprised me, I guess,
yeah, there are a lot of, our parents are going, and that's gonna be a big issue with childcare. Where I can tell you, I have friends that have businesses that are having to shut them down because they can't get help. Because in some areas, they're not going back to work because, the benefit is greater. So, it's something that has to be worked out. It is temporary. They're not thinking through. And I think that's part of what this whole thing has done to people. We should be celebrating because we're in summertime. And it's like, it kind of feels like school's getting ready to start. You know, it's just different. You didn't have all that hype. So.
Okay, if you turn the next page to human resources, you can see that reduction in that PR specialist position there. We do have a little bit of an increase in the wages in that category because we hired a part-time HR person to just handle the HB 486 requirements where you have to call, get background checks, call all employers back to a certain age of the applicant to determine if they have anything in their history that would warrant them not being hired. And that is,
That's a full-time job.
yeah,
It really
districts all over the state have hired people just to handle that because their regular HR staff, it is so much work above and beyond the normal onboarding process that they've just had to have somebody handle that, and that's what Patsy does. I believe she works 2 or 3 days a week over there, and she's been a big help.
And you're supposed to call the last 3 references. So think about, it's different, a little bit different today, but think about Margot. You know, if we were to hire you as a sub, or as decides, I want to come back and be a guidance counselor. Come on, Ms. Margaret, you're gonna be a guidance counselor. We'd have to go back through you spent how many years in this county? We'd have to go through and try and find supervisors of yours, and then the fingerprinting, and the deeper fingerprinting now. And so it's a lot, so that's why we get frustrated, this is my soapbox, that some systems are not doing that, and they're hiring beforehand. And you really, as a system, will get yourself jammed up. And so understand some people, we may have hired them pending all these checks. If their employer doesn't come back and give us a report, until we have 3, that person technically cannot start. So it could take a month, whereas before, Patty applies for a job, we look at the references, okay, here are the phone numbers, I can call them, boom, boom, boom. This is completely different, this is a paper trail where they have to send it back. And it takes an incredible amount of time and
Yeah.
effort.
And they're not allowed to be, I don't know what the final decision was, but I know they wanted to amend it because they could not be alone with children in a classroom
They still
until
didn't change it.
that was finished. And so you really need a person that can be on it like all the time, because you just can't contact somebody and then wait a few weeks and, oh, let me get back with them or whatever. It's gotta be done. So you really need a person dedicated to it that can just go after it and stay on it. And
But that's just a part-time,
that's just a
Timesheet.
part-time, timesheet position, non-benefited position.
to help make phone calls.
That's exactly what it is. And like I said, I think other districts have hired people specifically to do that as well. So that's really one of the increases there. They also, you see the computer software and subscriptions, that went up a bit by $9,200. We have purchased the onboarding program. It really integrates, it's with PowerSchool, which is also who owns our eFinance financial program. Before, we would have to do a lot of work in stages to onboard people. And so HR would have to do their part, and then payroll and finance would have to do their part. This integrates all of it, so there's a better workflow between the whole process. And it's a good record keeping. I think it will keep all of the records, the employee records, so we won't need filing cabinets anymore. And it's really a good product, and we're really looking forward to it. They allowed us to, if we sign the quote, we don't have to pay until fiscal year 21, but they've allowed us use of it so that we could get used to it and really get it going before the big hiring season starts in the summertime. So I know they were very excited about that program over there, and we're looking forward to it really being a nice liaison between the HR and the finance department in all of these record keeping things that we need to do. Technology. You'll see we actually have a decrease in technology this year, and that we can attribute that all to the CARES money, because we had definite needs, and I think, John Berlin and Jill can speak to that. We had dire technology needs. Laptops need to be replaced, so this is,
Something good that came out
if
of
there's
this.
one good thing that came out of this, it is that we are able to upgrade all of our technology for our students, which we desperately needed to do.
And we'll thank a lot of people, but we'll also continue to push the technology is no good if you don't have connectivity. And so they have to understand that rural America, rural Maryland needs help, and continue to tell the story. It's great to run it down Route 13. It's great to run it down 413. Now Comcast is going all the way to Deal Island. We need to get something down to Rumley. We need to get something down to Crisfield that's reliable. When you talk to people who branch off, I think there are 8 or 9 different services that people are using to try and get internet with hotspots and satellite and Charter and Skylab and all these other things. we need to have better signals. So hopefully through the rural broadband, that'll help our students and businesses and whatnot. But we put extenders on the buildings, technology department did that, and we're trying to talk with the county and with some groups about, there's money through the state to put towers up. Strategically, where they put these towers up could benefit us greatly as well. So you'll hear a lot of work hopefully this year being done with that, with other groups.
Okay, if you turn the page to Office of the Principal, the biggest increase there is actually in the school administrative assistants. There's a couple different things included in this increase of $39,000, but one of the bigger things is Chrisfield High School, we actually hired a receptionist associate to sit out front in the front office. And she actually works full-time, but she is paid partially out of local and partially out of another grant. And Chrisfield High School was the only school that did not have a dedicated front office person. So it was making it very difficult. The bookkeeper would have to go cover the front desk, and she would be very busy. And then there's I think the guidance secretary would have to go out there. And so that has been a request for a long time of Chrisfield High School to have somebody dedicated to do that. And so she was hired this year part-time to sit out there. And like I said, her role was expanded and the grant covered part of that as well. And they're very happy to have somebody out there. She's been great to work with the parents and the students as they come up there, and it really allows everybody else in the office to be able to concentrate 100% on the job that they need to do. So.
I have a question. It says, there's a decrease in vice principal level 2. May not be filled or?
Troy, can you say that again?
The decrease in the vice principals, I see that as.
I think that's probably a mistake. I need to update that.
Would that take out the dean positions that we have?
No, the deans are in instructional
In a different
salaries.
one,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I think we had some discussions, and then I think that change was just not reflected in there. Okay. In instructional program development and improvement on page 9, the biggest increase here, this is where we kind of let the step and COLA increase for Unit 2 reside until we finalize our negotiations. Also, you can see there's an increase in supervisors of 51,000. Our early childhood coordinator, procedure admin, and was moved to a supervisor position, and she was picked up totally in local for this year. So, and she was paid partially out of an early childhood grant, half and half, and this year local had to pick her up 100%.
But it's not a new position.
It's not a new position at all, no.
And she gives us about 10 times that. What she does. Grants and everything.
Yeah,
That's-
she's
that's
very,
one of
very
the things-
busy.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's tough is, I'm looking at Tom and Tracy. Grants, what's the date, where the sunset, when a grant ends. You have to pay close attention to grants, because it's great to have all these granted positions, and then all of a sudden, what happened? I hear myself now. You have all these granted positions, and then the grant ends. And it's not just the salary costs, it's the benefits, and so we really have to pay attention and plan ahead for what's coming.
Okay, the CTE, Office of the Principal, not much change there, just a little bit of increase in professional expenses to reflect the contract. Instructional salaries, this is where this is the biggest increase here, this is where we let the Unit 1 and Unit 3 step and COLA increases reside until we finish negotiations and finalize the budget, then we can move them where they need to go. You can see there's been a reduction. currently of the secondary summer school, but I know that we may need to add that back in based on our recovery plan.
Right.
So we might need to add that. You can see there's not a lot of change in the professional and classified salaries. Part of that is because we have kind of restructured some positions or removed the positions through attrition as we've learned of people leaving or they've left and we don't fill them. So that's all been part of our meetings and our budget process at this point.
And during our process, so you all understand, we'll sit and we'll make some decisions that have to be made. But then we'll also call the principals and say, listen, these are the options, this is where we are with your personnel, what are your choices? Because ultimately, they have to live with it. And so it goes both ways on that. There's involvement because they need some skin in the game as well.
The next page, textbooks and supplies. We have an overall decrease of $80,000. And part of that was for our budget for textbooks was relatively high for fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 as we moved to some of the online programming just to prepare for a possible distance learning in the fall. I mean, there's so much up in the air. So as we've looked at the requests that we've made, that were made, we also look at how we try to plan for every scenario of what the fall might be. And so we've been able to move to some online platforms that maybe are less expensive than some actual hardback textbooks. So for online or distance learning, you can just keep going. And so that's why there's been some reductions in that. And materials of instruction have gone up some through the request, but for the most part, it's the biggest drop is in the textbooks and the consumables from fiscal year 20. Other instructional costs, our dual enrollment has increased over the past couple of years, so there is a $15,000 increase budgeted for dual enrollment. Once again, I'm not sure how that will work out in the fall.
Looks like it all online.
Yeah, so if we'll have more students that want to do dual
We actually
enrollment,
do dual enrollment.
yeah.
Well, we do have, so I believe I mentioned this at the board meeting, the Eastern Shore 9 counties have gotten together, and we've got a proposal. We have Queen Anne's County is going to handle all the finances of our online school. There is also someone who has done that job there. A platform is going to be chosen. It will be synchronous learning. It has been decided to not just, we had to make a decision. So if Mr. Davis and Mrs. Barnaby decide they want to do online or remote learning, 9 o'clock is English 10. Mr. Davis will be there and his picture will be up on the screen. English with everybody else from 9 to 10. Could be our teacher, maybe a teacher from Kent County, could be a teacher from Worcester County. Then if Tracy needs her Spanish 1, it could be from 10:30 to 11:30. So everybody will be together at the same time so they have a structured day. We started talking about the asynchronous and doing all these different models. And sometimes we need to realize we have to stop giving choices. Too many choices is not a good thing, and that spreads us thin. This is your class, this is when you take it. And so it's just over $1 million grant from USDE. We have the proposal is, we're signing the paperwork to submit the proposal, and then we'll have it organized, sent out. Jill Holland will be our local person who's been involved in it, but we're gonna have someone who actually runs the program, administers the program, checks in with us. We still receive the full FTE. So it's different to now say that the Eastern ESMAC is going to offer a pre-K through 12 online curriculum. But with that being said, we don't know how that will impact this budget because we're talking about having it be unlimited spots because we still get the full-time enrollment. So maybe some students will dual enrollment's different because it's college credit, but some may be able to say, okay, in other words, we could work that in to what we're doing and say, hey, if you're interested in dual enrollment course, your English course, instead of being through a teacher teaching it, could be done it there, which would be covered under the grant we have. So that number could be smaller. So we'll have to see.
How will they choose teachers?
Teachers will have to interview, it's gonna be veteran teachers, teachers who are comfortable doing this, and lesson plan submission ahead of time, and will be a vetting of all 9 counties together with the contact person. Tom's been involved as deputy superintendent, especially at the high school level. I think it'll be more high school students that'll want to take advantage of it, but it's going to be your very best teachers that can adapt to doing this online.
And all the grading be done with everyone.
There's going to be a set grade policy that will be set up so that all Somerset County students will be graded the same way, whether you're online or in the classroom. And then Queen Anne's will do their grading policy, because we each have our own, but it'll be set up exactly like what we have for those who are physically sitting here.
Who does the grading?
The teacher.
The teacher that's in charge of.
And that's
So she has 500 students?
that's the concern about opening up like that, is how you're going to get everything graded. So that's got to be worked out too. We talked about doing it like we do everything else with percentages, like when we go to our ASMEC conference we used to have in June, we got a certain amount of seats based on our population. You may have to start it that way, and we don't know what kind of interest we'll have. But I also believe if we have 30 students who want to do it, and we only have 20 spots, if there are extra spots available, we have all agreed that we're going to shift those around. But I think we're going to have to cap it.
But you maybe advise.
It will be running by the first day of school. Wow, that's what I said. But, yeah, it'll be interesting.
That's one more benefit of belonging, paying the dues to the ESNEC
Exactly.
consortium, because they really do. We're a little bit different on this side of the bridge. We
Yeah,
operate
we
a
are.
little bit differently, and it's nice to have a consortium.
All my
of
counterparts are
districts.
wonderful across the state, but having those 9 people that we all get together and really know each other helps us, not only in purchasing power like we do with our utilities, but in this kind of endeavor as well. When Queen Anne's did pre-K through 8, Kent did a 9 through 12, and they're both very successful, so we meshed those models together. They used 2 different companies at each level and worked very well with it. So that saves it's unbelievable. But what it also does is it gives us an opportunity to reach out to our homeschoolers and say to them, would you like to look at the curriculum we have? Because it'll save you what you're paying in homeschool. You can be online, same thing. Maybe take a little pressure off mom or dad. There'll be no pressure. They will be offered it as well.
Okay, the next page is special ed. We have currently an overall increase of $83,863. And the majority of that increase is the result of, over the course of fiscal year 20, we have had to hire additional sped paras and one-on-ones. And so the number in fiscal year 21 doesn't really reflect that we're going to be hiring new ones. It's just reflecting the cost of the ones that we've had to hire over this year and the last year. And those are typically, of course, the one-on-ones are typically required in an IEP. And as you know, if a student moves into the district with an IEP, with a one-on-one, then we are required by law to follow that guideline as well until we do our own assessment. So sometimes you don't have any control over
That's
that.
a good point. I don't think a lot of people understand that. We accept the.
That is
IEP
federal
exists.
law,
Mhm.
and you can, if you don't follow those guidelines, you really run the risk of losing some special ed funding and things of that nature. So really, that's kind of this is more of a reflection of what is actually occurring right now, not really anything new. One of the new things that is at the bottom, it's not necessarily new, but we do have a proposed budget increase for non-public school programs because I do believe we have 1 or 2 students there, and there may be possibly another one. And those typically run $5,000 to $6,000 a month for each student that we have in non-public placement. So those get very expensive very quickly. So. Student personnel services, there's a reduction in that, not necessarily a reduction in staffing, it's just a reflection of what's occurred for this year. We did have a school social worker that we did not have this year in fiscal year 20. We did budget for them in 20, but he resigned, and so we never replaced that as well. And then the rest are just kind of adjustments for the actual positions and things that we have. Student health services. We increased the budget this year because, as you know, that is one of our budget transfers that we've had to have. We do have some part-time nurses that come in, especially for the elementary schools. They need a little bit more nursing staff there sometimes. We've also had some nurses, some part-time nurses that come in to help with some children that need some nursing as part of their IEPs and things like that. So we definitely needed an increase in the budget to reflect really what is happening in the nursing, with our nursing staff.
And stay tuned on this, we haven't even talked about this, but there is a movement and a lot of discussion about the health department should be supplying the nurses for the school system.
They actually do in some districts.
In some districts they do, and it's worked out very well to where it used to be a half funding. Now the health department receives that funding, which you can see would be a substantial savings for us. And so it just, there's purchasing power, and if you're a county health department, you're buying all the supplies, the school would just be involved in it as well. And again, they get the money to do that. So student health is important. You see the number, it's almost $500,000 that we spend on nurses and supplies and all the things. Are supplies even in this? Yes.
Yeah.
So it's something that we have not had that discussion locally, but there are systems moving towards that because we've seen the bigger systems, it's been very successful. Yes. It's more, yes. But the issue becomes, you work year-round, because you work for the health department. So, for instance, in COVID-19, those counties used a lot of school nurses to start doing the tracing and the testing. And that became an issue, but they work for the health department at the school system. Whereas ours, when they were contacted, if they were contacted, or Somerset County Board of Education employees, they don't have to do those things. They could earn extra money to do it. So you see the difference there. So it's going to be something we're going to look at this year. It came up on my latest superintendent's call, and it's something we've talked about for a while.
So could our nurses become part of
They would become part of the health department. So we would not even have, we would have a student health category, but there'd be no personnel. All that would be shifted over to the health department. It's just, many people were thinking, man, it really came up again with the tracing and the testing. And you had a group of nurses here that said, oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, you don't have to, you're Board of Ed employees in other counties. And then the issue said, well, that's not fair. Well, you don't work you work at the Board of Ed, but you work for the health department.
How does that work, like, as far as like needing substitutes to?
It would all fall through. The health, substitutes would be an issue. Because you see, yeah, that's a big cost.
Okay, on to student transportation. There's a slight increase, as the bus driver trainer will be full-time. As you know, the fall could be a a little bit, we're not sure where transportation's gonna land in the fall at this point. And so there's just more and more and more duties with that role, and so we made a change in that regard. Bus contracts went up slightly. That is just only to really reflect some changes in the proposed table of rates for fiscal year '21. And the other biggest increase is in transportation equipment down at the bottom. We're in the process of replacing all of the cameras and all of the school buses. And we actually do typically use MABE. MABE gives grant money, $10,000 grants each year to each district, and we utilize that typically to install new cameras in the buses. The next page, I think, is really interesting. Our special ed transportation went down, and part of this is because of the Zonar software, the Edulog software. We've really been able, Mr. Barnaby's really been able to analyze the routes and really have some reductions in costs among the bus drivers. And
We're much more efficient,
much more efficient, yes, so,
and the use of the vans has been nice.
yes, yeah, those vans are wonderful. So that did allow us to have a decrease in our special ed costs for transportation. School activities is slightly down. The transportation for summer school, as you can see, has been taken out, and some of the transportation for some of the student trips has been taken out. As we went through budget cuts and looking at the uncertainty of the fall and student travel, the supervisors chose some things that they would probably cut out for the year as far as student transportation goes for field trips and things of that nature.
I don't imagine we'll be doing any field trips in the fall at all. And athletics is one of our 5 buckets in our recovery plan to talk about. There's a lot of talk around athletics and how we do that, and they haven't made a decision yet. So it continues to be thrown around.
Operation of plant, the biggest increase here is the increase of the additional custodian over at the technical high school that I don't think was included in the 20 budget. So that's really what that is. And then you can see the increase in the PC technician line. That is to reflect the increase of an additional PC technician being hired to handle all the additional devices that we will have in the fall.
A lot of interesting things in that, just something I pick up on. Other charges, our insurance on our property is $84,000 a year. Our trash pickup is $81,500. You don't think about it, but we have 10 sites and the trash has to go somewhere. We spend $81,500 on trash pickup. Think. Yep.
It's true.
Yeah, and I like this because it's good information. When somebody says to you all, look at utilities, electricity, $650,000 a year. And we purchase in fall, bless you. So think if we didn't do that, our gas bill's $175,000, water and sewer $85,000, bless you. So you've got in utilities, we spend over $1 million to turn the lights on. Yeah.
That's why we pray for mild winters.
Exactly, and we always fill up the oil tanks when it's low price. Absolutely.
And no snow.
Yes, they really do make a difference.
And if you turn the page to the maintenance plant, the biggest increases in this category are the increase in other contracted services, and that's really kind of just a reflection of what is actually occurring with our some of the contract services that we have with regards to maintenance. And down below, there is some $50,000 in there for one of our maintenance vans definitely needs to be replaced. We really utilize our vehicles, I think, to the maximum extent possible. And we probably get more miles and usage out of some of our board vehicles than a lot of other places. And so there is one of the vans that definitely needs to be replaced. And so that's part of the cost in the $50,000, the biggest part of it. The next page is fixed charges, and this is where, of course, the health insurance increases reside. Workers' compensation, our workers' compensation rate did go up quite a bit, and I believe we did have like a $65,000 increase in our workers' comp bill estimate for the coming year. And so that's part of that workers' compensation increase there can be reduced by the workers' comp that's paid out of grants for employees that are paid out of grants. So that can be adjusted.
So over 3 years, our health insurance has gone up $500,000.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Our life that's insurance. That's doubled. $500,000, $500,000. And our, what's the life insurance ESMAC?
There's life insurance employees,
No.
the insurance ESMEC.
Yes.
That is our portion that we pay to ESMEC. We have a monthly
That's right.
deposit that we make to ESMEC every year, the Health Insurance Consortium, and it covers the vision, the prescription,
And
things
it
like
went
that.
up $400,000.
It goes, yeah, it can fluctuate because they base the deposit that you're required to make on estimates of usage and things like that, and you put some in reserves, and it's all kind of part of that consortium formula.
I mean, it's good to have it, but it's, when people ask, they don't understand health insurance is a lot more than what you think it is.
Yes. And we've been very fortunate, when we made that switch for the retirees to Labor First, it's really cut the cost for retiree health insurance for us. So far, I believe that it's been a positive experience for everybody involved.
It's been a transition, but it's,
Yeah.
it's, in the end, health insurance, I think, is the biggest thing that retirees think about.
Yes,
And to give them options is the best way to do it.
yes. So, and that is pretty much the summary of the biggest changes in our budget for next year and what we have been trying to work with and cover with our $696,000 of increased funds.
So we still have some work to do, so what I'm asking is to have you all look at this, and we're not gonna put you on the spot now, but circle some things, email myself or Linda. We can find the cuts, there'll be hard cuts, we'll hope. We might get some things after the 30th that give us some wiggle room, but we have to have a balanced budget approved by the 30th. And we have June, yeah. And we wait, like we've done in past years, we wait as long as we can because the GEARS money could come out. And so it's been, it's been a task. We'll get where we need to get. It's just a matter of where it comes from. And then understand that it's hard. We can make a lot of cuts. And then depending on what happens this fall, if you're not running buses, if you're not having all the expenses of the buildings, again, we don't know. I'm hoping for a traditional start with everybody back, but there's no guarantee. So as we work, there could be wiggle room that develops in this. But it's something to look at, and it's something, as I said, always continue. I know many of you, all of you serve on aid committees. $696,000 doesn't even cover the cost to open the doors for next year. So that's where we have to cut, but we're so dependent upon that state. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. And so they're tough choices, and they're things we have to do. And so we continue to reach out to our delegate, our senator, and people across the state to understand something like those nurses. If we had some kind of agreement like that, boom, we're balanced. It would be a big deal. And so there's just a lot, I think this whole experience of COVID-19 is all of us are thinking outside the box and we're thinking differently. And it's hard, a very traditional, and what I think should happen instruction-wise. I struggle with the online, I'm excited by the online opportunity, but I couldn't do it. But it's not for me, it's for our kids, and I think a lot of kids, I'm looking for some kind of acknowledgement, somebody died. Yeah, I don't know, and I was not a high school guy, I was elementary, and I can't imagine having a second grader home. I just can't, I wanted them in front of me, but at high school,
Well,
kids
congrats,
doing,
get a
what?
job, get a job.
Yeah, our new enrollment students that did Warwick online loved it. And that was synchronous, right? They had a set time, they met with the teacher,
Yeah, with their teacher.
So
That teacher will be live.
the teacher will be live. And then we're working this summer to develop backup. So if you're doing simple equations and you have your online course, you'll have your teacher you can reach out to, but then we're gonna have a bank of video lessons that they can also go to and see our teachers. And it could be our teacher teaching Algebra 1, it might be a Queen Anne's teacher or a Kent County, so it could be exciting. It could be scary too, depending on, at least. They've got it, that's gonna be part of the agreement, you've gotta get yourself somewhere, if you don't have it, you've gotta get to the library. We could work it out, if we want them or allow them to come to school, we may say to them, you don't have connectivity, we would rather you come to the technical high school and be in our distance learning lab, you could use that. And there's that transportation piece, so depending on how we set it up with the application and who applies, we'll work with students, and that would be a great use of that lab. To say to them, all right, come on in, use that lab, sign in, sign out. But we'll figure all that out by September. Exactly. So that's our summary.
Comments from any of you?
I don't know, this is something that should be published at all. In the past, we have been asked, like, on a board member, to consider, since we should bring that out for bid.
I would do that in closed. Yeah, I would do that in closed. Yeah, call. Because that is in the budget,
Okay.
so we'd have to go through RFP like anything else. Yep.
Any other comments? So now I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed?